Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for joining us today for a mini live lesson. Today, we welcome our friends from Ash, Scotland, who are going to talk to us today about the impacts of vaping. They're going to tell us all about the health impacts, and then I'm going to walk us through some of the environmental impacts as well. And at the end, we'll have some time for questions, because I'm sure that during our presentations, you'll think of lots of questions you'd like to ask. So I'd like to welcome Sheila Duffy. She is Ash Scotland's Chief Executive, and she is here to tell us all about the health effects of vaping. Most importantly, we're talking today about single-use vapes, so the disposable ones that you sometimes will see lying about. Sheila, welcome. Thank you for your time today. Thank you for joining us. I'm really excited to hear what you have to share with us today. If you'd like to share your slides, I'm really excited for this lesson to start, and I'll hand over to you.
Thank you very much. But it's lovely to be invited to come and speak with you all. Hope you had great holidays and that we have the chance to answer any questions you have at the end. But just a little about us. We are Ash Scotland. There are 4 Ash charities in the UK, and we deal with the whole of Scotland. I've been invited to come because I know something about the health side, something about these devices and how they operate, and something about the industries behind them. But I've called this vaping and waste because I think there's an awful lot of waste involved with these cigarettes. And it's not just the environmental waste, it's the waste of money, it's the waste of people's lungs and health. And, there's just quite a lot to unpack in it. So I'll talk you through some of the things we are seeing. So Ash Scotland has been around for 50 years, and the reason we were set up by the Royal Colleges of Physicians, Edinburgh, was because the tobacco industry would not admit that they were producing harmful products, that cigarettes and tobacco smoking harmed people's health. And the doctors had known about this since the 1950s. But the industry kept saying, no, 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 the scientists aren't sure. Hang on a minute, there's other things. And the public didn't know, people were getting confused. So Ash Scotland was set up by the doctors to try and get the information out to people, because for 20 years they had been trying to tell people that tobacco harmed health. And the response of the tobacco companies was not, oh goodness, we don't want to harm people, we will take back these products. The response of the tobacco companies was, doubt is our product. And they really doubled down on that. They brought in crisis public relations people. They did a lot of work with politicians, with the media. And they said, no, there's nothing to worry about, really. It's all good. Scientists don't agree. It's not proven. So when we were set up, there was a lot of smoking everywhere. Most grown men in Scotland smoked. And if you walked into a cinema or a restaurant or a pub, it was really smoky because there was no rules that would stop you smoking. So that's what it was like when we were set up. And I think we've come a long way since then. But the tobacco industry has fought every step of the way not to be regulated and to challenge what the doctors and scientists are finding out about tobacco. So the other thing is that they have continued to really promote and market tobacco, and they are still doing it. So they will do it within the rules of the country, but in other countries, for example, Indonesia, where they don't have the rules that we have, they will sell single cigarettes rather than packs. They will encourage people to see smoking as something that gives you confidence, that makes you slim or glamorous, that relieves stress. And we know that's not the case. It feels like stress relief, but it actually leaves you in a worse place than when you started. And these are some of the adverts that you used to see for tobacco. And they're adverts that say, if you're a young man and you want to be confident and you want to be attractive, smoke cigarettes. If you're a young woman and you want to be glamorous and you want to be attractive, smoke cigarettes. hey, if you've got kids, you should smoke cigarettes because they're great for stress. They're not great for stress, but that was the marketing. And the marketing convinced people to try them. And there's a problem because tobacco is addictive, and cigarettes were designed to be as addictive as possible. So that people tried them and they thought they would make them feel confident and they believed the advertising. But then when they tried to stop, they found it harder and they became dependent on it. It became part of their lives. For many people, it became an addiction. And the tobacco companies really put their money and profits over the people that were buying these products. So they, first of all, tried to say, no, no, no. For between the 1950s and the 1970s, they were going, no, 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 no. It's not proven. There isn't the evidence. Go away. It's all fine. Don't worry about it. Very few people have any harms from this. And then in the 1970s, they went, okay, we admit there's problems, but we've produced reduced harm cigarettes. So that solved the problem. Just use these. They'll be great. They didn't work. And people were still smoking and still getting damaged. And in the 1990s, they said, hey, it's tar that does the damage. So what we'll do is we'll produce light and low tar cigarettes. And they had a whole marketing strategy for these. They put them in white packs so they looked more healthy. They sold them as being, you can smoke these, it's not really a problem. And then again, it took years and years and years to find out that they had failed with those devices. And what was actually happening is they'd put holes in the filters that you were sucking in air with your smoke and getting less smoke. And yet you were still getting the damage. There's no safe level of smoking. So the industry, over all the years since it began selling cigarettes, has put its money and profits above its consumers and has hidden information which it knew from science it paid for that would have told people useful things. So, for example, in the 70s, they knew that if you smoked while you were pregnant, it was not good for you and not good for the baby. And they hid that. So it took a long time for independent scientists to find that out. And it took even more time, several decades, to find out that they'd lied about this and hidden it. And they knew it before anyone else did. So what we are seeing working in this area is we are seeing that the tobacco companies have not changed, because although they talk about wanting to reduce harm, they're not honest, and they are still marketing and promoting and advertising these products. So we've seen a number of new products on the market, and what we've seen is e-cigarettes they're really kind of very popular at the moment. They're very widely available. And they are being marketed by tobacco companies as less harmful than tobacco. Although, if you look at health evidence, it takes decades to find out really what's going on and to see some of the serious stuff. But they're also marketing nicotine pouches, which is like little nicotine tea bags you put in the corner of your lip, and it releases chemicals and nicotine through into your mouth. And we're seeing heated tobacco products, and they've got all sorts of things that they're marketing and pushing to try and maintain a market. And they're not doing anything to reduce people smoking, but they're trying to sell other things alongside the smoking. So I'd like to invite you just to take a minute or so and be directed by your teachers or whoever's with you, just to have a think about what could go wrong here, what might we see, and I'll come back on in a minute. So here are some of the things that we've seen in the UK, and the kind of pop-up poster on the right that has all the colours in it, that was actually a banner in Aberdeen bus station, in a place where there's lots of fast food outlets, where a lot of teenagers and young people are gathering and socialising. And it's kind of making out like these are medicines. The shop is called Doctor Vape. So these are some of the things that I quite often see in my area, just lying on the streets. I see young people using them. I've seen people that don't look 18 at all, look a lot younger, going into shops and buying them. So in the middle, this is like cartoon characters. And again, we've seen this kind of novelty going on. And on the other side, you'll see fidget spinner vapes, and that was being sold online by a company in the north of England. Um, it's a toy. So just thinking about some of the advertising, some of the marketing, maybe have a wee think and have a wee chat with your teachers and with your classes about who are these designed to reach out to, and what do the companies do to try and make them appeal to people. And again, I'll just give you a couple of minutes to chat, and then feel free to post things in the chat thread. So thanks again for the comments. I think you've absolutely nailed it. I mean, these are colourful. They're actually quite often highly flavoured. They've got sweety flavours that are marketed as if they were kind of fizzy drinks or sweets or fruit. Um, they're attention grabbing in the way that sweets and toys are attention grabbing. And as was rightly pointed out in the chat, they can be addictive. And the ones that we most often see, the kinds of ones on the pop-up banner on the right-hand side of the slide, these have the highest level of nicotine in them that is allowed by the law in this country. And we've also heard stories of younger children picking them up and having a try at them because they look like sweeties. And that's just very nasty for all kinds of reasons, not just the germs, but also because the liquids are full of chemicals. And a lot of these flavorings are okay to put in food and eat, but when you heat them up to make a vapor and you breathe them into your lungs, you're taking in a lot more chemicals. And some of those chemicals are doing things that we just don't know what the effects are going to be. So there's a lot of concerns about getting addicted. There's a lot of concerns about exposing your lungs to harmful chemicals, and real concerns about some of the companies behind these devices and how they are marketing them at children and at young people, and what that means for the future. So this picture is actually one, and thanks for the posts, by the way, they're great. This picture is actually one that was devised because it's a bit of a puzzle. People can see it in different ways. So I don't know if you want to kind of indicate, put up your hands for your teachers, who sees a kind of like a vase or a goblet, and then who sees two faces looking at each other. So people see this in different ways, and I think this whole area of debate is often like that. So some people think, are e-cigarettes great for helping people get off cigarettes and smoking? And for a very small number of people, yes, they can be a step away from tobacco. But for a lot more people, they can be a step into getting addicted to something that can lead on to tobacco, because we know that if you've never smoked or vaped and you start vaping, you're at a 3 times more risk of ending up smoking. And a lot of the companies behind tobacco and smoking are really getting into these devices. They're getting into the marketing. They can target people through social media. They can actually go for particular age ranges. They can go for particular images. They've always done that with tobacco. They've aimed at people, say, of Afro-Caribbean origin. They've particularly marketed at them. They've aimed at people who were gay and going on pride marches. They've marketed at them. In the past, they marketed at women and said, this is freedom, this will get you equal rights. You know, they really are quite hard-nosed about trying to get people using their products and bringing in profits. But there's a real risk of addiction, and it can creep up quite quickly on people. it changes your brain to make it more likely that you will become addicted. And these companies are coining in the money, whatever they sell. They're not trying to not sell any of it. And these things have real question marks, real concerns about the long term. So we have unknowns about just how harmful they are. It took us, it took us from the science, it took us between 30 years and 60 years at least to know the harms of tobacco. And e-cigarettes have been around for less than 20. So we know some of the harms, but we don't know all of them. And there are real concerns about what we know. So we know that if you use e-cigarettes, it can make you feel sick and dizzy. It can give you headaches. We know that it damages the lungs because there's tiny particulates in it of the same kind that you get in tobacco smoke or air pollution that inflame your lungs and make damage. We know that people can get poison from the liquid, and there's been instances of very toddlers, small children, drinking in liquid and being poisoned. And we know that there is a risk of burns and explosions with some of these devices as well. And in terms of the unknowns, we think that there's enough that we do know that we're seriously worried about what they're going to do to people's health. So someone that starts smoking, say at the age of 14, is at a lot more risk of developing lung cancer when they grow up and later in life because the damage is done and it continues to be done. And that's one of the worries about e-cigarettes. The environmental concerns I won't talk too much about because we are going to come on to that in a minute with Keep Scotland Beautiful. But I would say it's a shared concern that these are being thrown away and they're ending up all over the place. They are affecting wild animals and birds. They are affecting our seas and rivers. And even if you throw them in the bin, there are such risks because we've seen that bin lorries go on fire that you can't deal with them in the way that you deal with normal litter. They're very complicated products. There's a lot of different bits to them. And we also know that there are those tiny fine particles that get right into your lungs deep and go into your bloodstream. And so, like tobacco smoke, we would like to see the air cleared and policies that include anything that produces aerosol or smoke that is harmful to lungs. So I want to just hand back to your teachers and the people that you're with and maybe give you a little longer, maybe 3 or 4 minutes this time, to have a think about if you know someone who is using e-cigarettes or vapes or who might be thinking about trying them. Just out of some of the things you've heard, what advice might you give them if you were having that conversation with them? And again, please do share your thoughts in the chat and then we can all share them with each other. So I'll go on mute and I'll hand you over back to your teachers and the people with you. Wanted to say thank you and how impressed I am with all the answers and suggestions and all the advice that you're giving. I'm not sure you needed to hear from me. You've really got a lot of wisdom and understanding of what's happening. I would say if anyone, Ash Scotland will read through this advice and these messages and contributions because it's useful for us, I think, to understand what you're seeing. If any of your teachers want to contact us, Keep Scotland Beautiful's got our contact details, and we'd be happy to share what we know as well. But I think there's some great things coming through and real awareness that we can see harms here and that we need to just be really careful. Thank you all. And if anyone out there in the classes is worried about this, please do talk to an adult in your school or in your family and get advice from them about how to deal with it. I'll hand back to Katrina and stop sharing.
I was really impressed with the answers that all the people's watching gave there. There's some really well thought out answers, and I like that you'd be willing to support your friends to stop vaping if you found out that they were struggling to quit themselves. Um, so now we know the health impacts of single-use vapes. I would really like to share with you just now some of the environmental impacts, which I see from your answers before that a lot of you already know a lot of this. Hopefully I can share a couple things that you might not know. Let's have a go. Right, so we've heard from Sheila at Ash Scotland that vaping can affect our health, and there's quite a lot of very serious ways that that can happen. But now we're going to talk about how single-use vapes can affect our environment as well, and the health of the places and the wildlife that we really love. And as always with our lessons, let's start with a couple of true or false questions to see what we already know. And I think that you're going to smash this because you already know so much. Let's see, true or false. You can dispose of a single-use vape in any bin. So if you think that's true, put your hand up. And if you think it's false, put your hand on your head. Let's see what you think. Just have a look at the chat and see what you think here. Ah, can't fool you at all because the answers are pouring in and they all say false, which is correct. Because although what we don't want is for vapes to end up as litter, we also don't want them to end up in the wrong bin. Single-use vapes contain not only, as Sheila was saying, nicotine and various flavoring chemicals, but they also contain valuable materials such as lithium batteries, copper wire. They're also full of plastic. They actually belong in a special bin called a WEEE bin, WEEE, which stands for Waste Electrical and Electronic Equipment. So what is WEEE equipment really? Well, waste electrical and electronic equipment, which is a mouthful, includes things like your mobile phone, laptops, household appliances like toasters or microwaves, toys, game consoles. So if one breaks, it needs to go there. Basically, anything that uses a battery or that plugs in. So there is someone asking, so where are we supposed to dispose of a vape safely? And the answer is that many retailers are supposed to have a bin where you can bring them back, just like if you have seen battery recycling bins in supermarkets, there are supposed to be bins like those to bring back used vapes. Unfortunately, they don't exist in enough places. And so vapes often end up in with regular waste, and we'll see what happens when that happens. There's also bins at amenity sites that you can bring vapes to. We'll get to that a bit later on. Our next question, true or false again, is it possible to recycle single-use vapes? Again, if you think that's true, put your hand up. And if you think it's false, put your hand on your head. I think I might catch you out with this one. Let's find out. I see that Park Primary School have commented that they've teamed up with Tesco to have specialized vape bins at customer service desks. That is pretty amazing, and we would love to hear more about that, especially how you safely dispose of them. I can see false 50-50. Not so sure about this one. That's okay, because the answer is actually a little bit tricky. The answer is it's true, but so it is true that you can recycle a single-use vape. It is possible, but it takes a lot of time and energy to do so because you have to take the vape apart and separate all of those components. That takes time and energy, and these resources don't exist everywhere. So how big is this problem? Single-use vapes are quite small. It can't be that bad, right? Across the whole of the UK, we know that half of single-use vapes that are purchased are thrown away instead of being recycled. And that's 1.3 million every single week. That's a huge number. Let's think of something that we can think about. Well, how big is 1.3 million? Well, that is only slightly more than the number of people who live in Glasgow, Edinburgh, and Stirling combined. That's a lot of people. That's a lot of single-use vapes. And you can see how something so small can turn into quite a big problem indeed. 1.3 million. All of those people. Right, across the whole of the UK again, that adds up to 5.4 million every month, or roughly one vape for every person in Scotland. That is a lot. So what is inside a single-use vape? Now, I'm going to have a look at pictures, but don't take one apart yourself, please. This is not a safe activity to do at home, okay? But if you were to take a look inside a single-use vape, you'd find a number of different parts, and they're all made of different materials. For example, there is the plastic mouthpiece and an outer casing, which is sometimes a bit foamy and sometimes hard plastic. There's a metal end cap. Well, it's usually metal. And then the lithium ion battery, which is what we're going to have a good look at in a minute. There's an airflow sensor, which contains copper wires usually. So this is another one of our valuable materials. There's the container where the flavored liquid and nicotine is usually found. And there's also adhesive tape that holds everything together inside. We're going to focus on the lithium ion battery as one of the valuable materials being wasted. So if you don't already know, lithium is a silvery white metal. It's very soft, and it's used in making lightweight batteries that are used in things like your smartphone or a laptop. And it looks like this before it's turned into batteries. Not all lithium batteries are rechargeable, but lithium is an essential part of many batteries that are rechargeable. And it's considered a finite resource, which that's the opposite of renewable. So if you think of a renewable energy, you're looking at things like wind turbines, right? Because that wind is found easily and without any impact on the environment. But lithium is a finite resource. It's not renewable. And this is because it can't be easily or quickly replenished. We can't easily find more. We either have to recover it from old batteries, or we have to mine new lithium to make new products. But despite this, despite how difficult it is to get a hold of lithium and how much damage it causes the environment to mine it, we throw away 10 tons of lithium in single-use vapes alone every single year. And again, some of these numbers are hard to picture. Well, at least I find it hard to picture unless I can think of it in terms of another number, another thing that I can picture in my head. So 10 tons of lithium is enough lithium, to make batteries for 1,200 electric vehicles. That's a lot. It's a lot of a very finite, hard to come by resource that's just being wasted when it could be recovered or ideally not used at all for vapes. Throwing away reusable lithium means that we need to mine more for new batteries. And when we were preparing this lesson, I had never seen a picture of a lithium mine, but this photograph is quite shocking, really, because it turns out that mining lithium requires lots and lots of water. It takes around 500,000 gallons of water to extract 1 metric ton. And again, I realize these numbers are difficult to think of in your head, but that's quite a lot of water compared to how much lithium. The water, that's because lithium comes from salts that are found in the ground, and the water is used to make kind of a mineral-rich soup that's then evaporated. But this process requires a lot of energy, and it can harm the soil because toxic chemicals can also leak from the evaporation pools, which are the blue things that you're seeing in this picture here, and that can also cause air contamination. So mining lithium is not an easy process, and it's not very kind to the environment. So let's recap for a moment. So far, we've learned that millions of single-use vapes are used every year. that they contain valuable materials like lithium and that they're not being recycled the way they could be. We know that nearly half of single-use vapes that are purchased are thrown away instead of being presented for recycling. But where does that other half go? So research by a recycling campaign group called Material Focus has found that only 17%, so there's the 50% that we've just talked about there, the ones that end up thrown away. 17% of vapers recycle their vapes in the correct recycling bins. So where does the last third end up? Well, we know in Keep Scotland Beautiful that many of this third of vapes end up on our streets as litter because we see them when we do our survey work. So we do education work, as you know, but we also conduct a lot of surveys on Scotland's streets and parks, beaches, and motorways. So we're out there quite a lot most days surveying parts of our beautiful country. And what we're finding is that nearly half of the places people that we speak to during our work has said that they often find single-use vapes littered in their communities. And I think the word often is important here because it's not, well, I sometimes see them, I might occasionally see them. These are becoming quite a common sight on our streets and parks and walkways, which is not a good thing. This is an annual litter survey that we do. We speak to people across Scotland about their thoughts on environmental issues, and we also walk up and down the streets counting the littered items that we find. So among young people, that 44% of people who say they see them often, if you look at only young people aged 16 to 24, that number rises to 56%, which means that more than half of young people are often seeing littered single-use vapes in their communities. I know I can see from the chat that a lot of you are posting that, you see them often in your communities too. We don't, for this particular survey, speak to people under 16. And I have a feeling that if we did, we would get a lot more of you in particular saying that you see them. We also do litter surveys, which you can do yourself as part of your Eco Schools work, where we go around with an iPad or a clipboard and we count the number of littered items found in a certain section of streets or parks, and in thousands of locations across Scotland. In these surveys, we're finding single-use vapes in 6% of the surveys that we've conducted, which doesn't sound like a lot, but that means that single-use vapes are a growing category. They are Scotland's fastest growing littered item. What this figure doesn't include is littered packaging or stickers, which are also a blight on our environment. For some reason, people seem to like decorating bins with the stickers from single-use vapes, and they also throw away the plastic packaging and cardboard that come with them. And like I just mentioned, single-use vapes are the fastest growing category of litter found in our surveys across Scotland. And I wonder if you can guess what the most commonly littered item that we find is. I'll move on to this next slide and see if you can guess what then in the chat. I'll give you a minute to think about it. As Sheila was saying, single-use vapes contain nicotine and chemical flavorings. And those are different depending on all the different flavors, right? And these can leak from discarded vape pens and be eaten by wildlife or pets. According to the RSPCA, animals have in the past, they can suffer nicotine poisoning, and there have been cases in the past where this has happened because vapes are brightly colored. So not only are they attractive to young people, they're also attractive to our pets. And they can eat this thinking it's food, and this can be fatal to wildlife or pets. And also, you may remember if you joined us for our lesson on single-use plastics, that when animals eat plastic, it stays in their stomachs and makes them feel full. And then this stops them from eating properly. And makes them ill. If you look closely at this photograph of a seagull, you can see that she has a vape in her mouth. So hopefully not going to feed that to any chicks. And I'm looking in the chat, you are correct. The most commonly found littered item in Scotland is cigarette butts. And vapes are quickly joining them as a very large category of littered items. So littered vapes, they don't only look unsightly and cause problems for wildlife, but they can cause other problems as well. So like we said before, they contain a battery, and this battery can catch fire if it's crushed. And this can happen if it's run over by a car or crushed in a bin lorry, for example. Can also overheat if they come into contact with metal. For example, if you keep them in your pocket with coins, there have been many cases in the past where they have overheated and caused injury and damage. Single-use vapes can also leak harmful chemicals if they're put in waste like battery acid, lithium, and nicotine into the environment, as well as all the various chemical flavorings that they contain. So here is a very interesting photograph. There's been a number of fires in waste collection vehicles like this one that happened in Lincolnshire earlier this year, where a waste collection crew had to dump the entire load of waste that they were carrying onto the road in order for firefighters to put the fire out because the whole bin lorry was in danger of going up in fire. And unfortunately, this meant, no, this load of rubbish was actually meant to be headed for the recycling, but it all had to be landfilled because of damage and contamination from the fire. So I'd like to thank South Kesteven Council for letting us share this photograph. What a mess. Now, this type of fire is not always caused by vapes, but it is caused by the type of battery that a vape contains. So all of these reasons that we've gone over are why Keep Scotland Beautiful, along with Ash Scotland, the Marine Conservation Society, and activists Laura Young and Elliot Welsh are calling on Scottish ministers to ban the sale of single-use vapes in Scotland. This will take time. So meanwhile, we're also calling on Scottish retailers to follow the lead of supermarket chain Waitrose and introduce a voluntary ban on the sale of single-use vapes. Accompanying us in our call for a ban are organizations such as Surfers Against Sewage, the RSPCA, and the Whale and Dolphin Conservation. You can follow our campaign on social media using the hashtag ban disposable vapes if you're interested in seeing if your local authority is backing the ban or if you'd like some more information on that. So after hearing all of this, you might be wondering, what can you do about it? Because in our live lessons, we like to give you information, but we also like to empower you to take action. There's a lot you can do. First, you can share what you've learned here today with your friends and family so they can make informed choices. Next, you could write to your MSP and ask them to support the ban. And in our resources folder that accompanies this lesson that your teachers have, there will be notes on how you can do this. You can help us gather data with citizen science surveys that's also in the folder of resources. If you have done a litter pick before, you'll know that we have a survey sheet that you can use to tell us what you're finding. Now, I don't recommend that you touch single-use vapes or pick them up or store them or anything like that, but you can tell us where you're finding them, and that kind of information is very valuable to our campaign work here at Keep Scotland Beautiful. You can support the ban yourself with an article or a video, for example, for young reporters. And lastly, you could start your own campaign in your school or your community. And if you're not sure how to do this, you could look at activist Laura Young, because she's a very good example and some campaign inspiration for you. She is an award-winning climate activist, environmental scientist, and ethical influencer. And she continues to lead on the campaign with single-use disposable vapes, banned across Scotland and in the UK. And her work on this has been nominated for a Holyrood Climate Action Award. So you can find out more about her work at her website, which is lesswastelaura.com. You can also take action through eco schools. So maybe you're doing health and well-being or litter and waste, for example, for topics for your Eco Schools Green Flag Award. And here are some actions that you could add to your action plan from this lesson. We'll put this action plan in the folder of resources. But you could, for example, carry out a survey of pupils, family, and staff to see how many of people in your community vape and how much they use, and repeat in a year to see if there's been any difference. You can survey the understanding of impacts of vaping. You can have an assembly, for example. You could invite someone to come to your school to talk about the impact of vapes, and you can find out which local shops sell them, for example, or carry out a litter survey for Keep Scotland Beautiful. And as always, we would love to hear from you about your thoughts on this lesson and what you do to take any action. So you can share your work with us on all social media platforms at KSB Scotland, and we will share with Ash Scotland as well. And I would like to thank you for taking part. If you have any questions, I know that many of you will have questions. If you have any questions you'd like to put in the chat, we can attempt to get back to you with an answer. If you have any questions for Sheila as well. But I would like to thank you very much for joining me today. I'd like to thank you too, Sheila, for your time and your brilliant lesson today. That was really good to hear about all the health impacts as well. But I think that's all we have time for today. So bye for now.